All right, welcome to this edition of the Land Lakers podcast with the Kamenetzky Brothers. I'm Brian Kamenetzky. Andy Kamenetzky joined today. And, some people, Andy, have taken the pandemic and they're like, you know what? I'm just going to get out of town. Mo Dakhil has taken it to another level. He's taken it to another galaxy.
Look,
I'm out.
I don't blame anybody trying to get out of America right now.
He's not even getting off America. He's off the planet.
You know what, though? I mean,
Brian, have you seen the list of places we can go?
That's true. That is very true.
You get out of America, you got no other options other than space. People, by the way, who don't see this, by the way, we should clarify. We're doing this on Zoom, and Mo's background is space.
Space.
He's just out in space right now, like he's Clooney in Gravity.
Yeah, the problem is, Brian, I left my passport in LA. So I have a sort of customs issue. We are currently trying to figure out. And oddly enough, there has not been a U.S. embassy established yet on Mars.
Well, we're working on it. Mo Dakhil joining us today.
You're not missing much, Mo. I'll tell you that right now.
You know him from Bleacher Report, from the Nerder She Wrote podcast with Dave Dufour on The Athletic, also with Kelly Eco, Brody and the Beard. Thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate it.
Oh, I love chatting with you guys.
There was an unusual pregnant pause before I got to thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. Should let you know, Mo, if you ever do make it back to the earth, you're going to be hungry. You're going to want some pizza. And we recommend heading out to Delicious Pizza, 2 locations, one on West Adams, one in Hollywood. And you go out, the pizza is absolutely fantastic. You give us the password Kamenetzky or Cam Brothers. When you go to deliciouspizza.com, or when you just call them up and order, get 20% off. They'll do that for you. Not only is the pizza really good, Andy, they are huge Laker fans over there. The guy who runs the place, massive. He's sending us emails at 2 a.m. because he's concerned about Dion Waiters. He is not screwing around.
No. He knows the team well. He is as passionate about the Lakers as everybody listening to this podcast. He's an LA guy through and through. He before Delicious Pizza, he co-ran Delicious Vinyl, the record label. He still runs it. They had Tone Loc for a while, Young MC. The history just of Mike Ross in general is actually really interesting. But again, Delicious Pizza, West Adams, Sunset, Hollywood, off Sunset, 20% off with Cam Brothers with your order. So go there. It is fantastic pizza.
So the Lakers finished up on Thursday their bubble 8 games, their warm up for the playoffs. And it truly was, for the Lakers, a warm up. The minute they won that game against the Clippers, they were functionally the number 1 seed in the West. And the Clippers really weren't going to put the pedal to the metal anyway. So the Lakers finished 3-5. They didn't look particularly good throughout any of that process. And the shooting picked up a little bit near the end. Thursday they shot the ball pretty well against the Kings, but it doesn't matter because nobody was playing. Mo, what were your impressions just broadly of what we saw from the Lakers over these 8 games?
I mean, the terrifying thing was obviously how bad the shooting was, right? You have Danny Green shooting below 30%, KCP shooting below 30%. It's a bit troubling. You get a little scared and you wonder, well, how much are we actually missing Avery Bradley? How much does Rondo actually do?
Sorry, folks, my ride's here.
Andy, you know what you did.
I do know what I did, and the list is long.
Oh, boy. It's going to catch up to you eventually. I mean, if you want to hop on, I could send out a little pod for you. You want to come up to space with me.
I can't leave my family behind, Mo. I mean, they're already going to be dealing with the burden of what I'm getting picked up for. I can't become a fugitive in space.
Fair enough. But I just think for the Lakers in general, it's been a uneven play because even though they weren't going to go all out, you wanted them to at least look better. And offensively, it was a real struggle, especially early on. And I had noticed at one point, I was like, man, they kind of stopped posting up LeBron.
Yeah.
And I was curious if that's something that they're going to get back to in the playoffs or not, because that was such a key part of their offense that created looks for everybody. I'm not at doom and gloom just yet with the team. I think, honestly, I think they need just a tough first-round playoff to kind of get the gear going.
They may just get that with the Blazers.
Well, we don't know. I mean, look, as we record this on Thursday afternoon, Phoenix is stomping Dallas. Dallas not playing Porzingis, and Luka's going to get some short minutes, and Memphis is stomping a Giannis-less Milwaukee team. So it's really going to come down to, it looks like, tonight and the Portland game.
And you know why they're Giannis-less? Because he headbutted a Mo. You never headbutt a Mo.
Were you offended that he only got one game? I wasn't surprised, because 2 games means a playoff.
Mo Wagner, by
one
the way,
game,
for people unaware,
right.
Former Laker, Mo Wagner.
So, Mo, did you take that personally? Did you think that was worth 3 or 4 games just for the Mo factor?
I mean, yes and no. I believe Mo Wagner spells it with an E, which does bother me. So one game is one game is fine.
Do you remember the full name?
Huh?
Do you remember his full name?
No.
It's Moritz.
Had you ever forgot? Did you ever know it to be able to forget it?
That's a good question, Brian. And no, I did not know his full name was Moritz. I just thought it was Mo.
You know what? Actually, there were a bunch of last year, the Lakers, their rookies were a bunch of guys with all ambiguous names. Like we're talking about Moritz Wagner. We learned this year that it's Itzhak Bonga. It's not Isaac. It's Itzhak. I mean, and like when we say we discovered this, because the Wizards were in LA for a preseason game, and we all discovered this, like the Lakers discovered this. Like I went around asking different people with the team, like this is the most reporting, Mo, I've done in years. I was like, did you guys know that it was Isaac and not Isaac? They're like, wait, what are you talking about? Like nobody knew this. The kid was just so polite. He wasn't correcting anybody like you do with your last name, Mo.
Yes.
You do. You've done this for years.
I was going to say, I can relate.
Yes.
He was just happy to be there.
We were, for years, we were pronouncing Dakhil Samson because we just didn't realize we were doing it wrong. But so like but you have this setup where, none of the top teams necessarily looked great. I think in the bubble, nobody was playing, everybody had their own kind of thing. They were disjointed, trying to keep people healthy. The Clippers have guys in and out of the bubble, and Lou Williams is getting, lemon pepper flats and all these other things. The Laker fans, though, I think are feeling some angst, not just because of the shooting, which was god awful, and I would say suspect all season long. They were a bottom third 3-point shooting team all year, most of the year. But Andy, you were talking about it when we were kind of getting ready for this. We didn't see playoff LeBron. We didn't see the ramp up to playoff LeBron. We didn't see anything that looks like what they're going to need. Forget Anthony Davis here for a minute, who we talked about in our last episode. LeBron hasn't quite been LeBron either.
Dude, we haven't seen regular season LeBron.
Right.
I mean, forget playoff LeBron. The game that they played against the Kings, I don't have those stats updated, but it was only a half, and it's the Kings.
15 minutes, 17 points, 3 rebounds.
But I mean,
4
in terms of how it affects his overall numbers in the bubble, I don't have that. I also don't really care because it was half a game, and again, it was the Kings. LeBron is shooting under 45% from the field, shooting 33% from behind the arc. He's at 7 assists, 7.3 against 3.2 turnovers. So, a little better than 2-to-1 in that ratio. That is these are the counting stats, but those are way below. I mean, considerably below what LeBron was doing over the course of the regular season. And he's in particular, Mo really struggled to finish. Like at the rim, he's missed a lot of layups, like, bunnies, like stuff at the rim that LeBron typically puts down in his sleep. Like even this game against the Kings, there were a few where you could see, like, through LeBron's facial expressions and body language, it's like, damn, man, like really, I'm really not getting this to fall.
Yeah, it's kind of startling, especially understanding that, look, when the hiatus hit, we were, there was the movement to LeBron could be the MVP, and there was that whole campaign, and there was a push behind it, and they were coming off their 2 biggest wins of the year against the Bucks and the Clippers, and looked great in those games. I think there was, it's almost startling. Like that was the last image we saw, and then we see him now. We're like, whoa! It's almost like if you haven't seen Avengers: Infinity War or Endgame. I'm sorry to spoil it here, but it's almost like going from regular Thor to Fat Thor, you know, and you're just like, what the hell, you know?
Fat Thor is fantastic. Fat Thor is really, really funny.
Good name for a fantasy football team too. But like, you know, it's if this were if the season hadn't been interrupted, you would look at a lot of this stuff and just say, oh, it's LeBron. He's 35 years old. He's hitting the wall. It's all these other, but I don't think you can go there because, you know, even set age aside, like they had 4 months off. Like, you know, LeBron had time to heal. Maybe the groin's bugging him a little bit more than the Lakers are letting on or whatever it is. I think you can't necessarily, I would take that as a comforting thing if were I a Laker fan, that it's probably not fatigue or age or something like that. And until I see LeBron not do what he normally does in the playoffs, I'm going to assume is going to do what he does in the playoffs. But it's just, it's part of that layer of concern. Like, and I think every team, their fan base feels it. But you look at it, Anthony Davis was inconsistent, and teams showed that if you throw bodies at him, like sometimes it takes him out of his game. LeBron didn't look great. The shooting wasn't great. And you want to go into the playoffs feeling really good. And even though other fan bases have reasons to be nervous too, and teams have reasons to be nervous, Mo, too, but it's just hard to get there right now with the Lakers. I'm not, they're at the least going to the Western Conference Finals, but I could see where they might be a little bit nervous, a little bit worried.
I think the worry is fair. I think it's something that you're just going to have. It's again, because it's just everything you lined up. It's stuff that's like, okay, well, that's not good. Okay, that's not good. What is the positive stuff? And I'm going to give Laker fans the one positive thing I really thought was impressive. It's something they should hang their hat on. And this is something that I never thought I'd see. But Kyle Kuzma had a pretty damn good bubble.
Didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did. And not just offensively. I thought he was great defensively, and maybe not coming up with stops all the time, but defensive effort is something that I've harped on about Kuzma and felt like, he just didn't care. And that is something I felt very different about in these 8 games in the bubble. I felt like it kind of clicked. And you hear stories of Jared Dudley kind of being in his ears going like, your shot may not always go down, but you can defend. You got to work. You got to be able to play defense. And that's been a bright spot for the Lakers. He's shooting 44% from 3 in the bubble. Like, I think these are all things that they can feel a little bit comfortable with, because I'm with you, Brian. And until LeBron can't do it, I'm not saying he can't do it.
I'm assuming he can. Now he's got to be. It's what makes it is just like, it's not that he has to be regular season. Like Andy read off some of those numbers. The expectation is that he and AD will be better, that they elevate, because that's what LeBron does. But I think the Kuz thing is massively significant. Andy, you've written about it all year long for The Athletic. Like, he's the thing in the same way that Michael Porter Jr. makes the Nuggets a potentially different playoff team, because nobody was expecting that guy to be ready to put up 23, 24 points a game. If Kuz is a really consistent player in the playoffs, like, that changes everything about what the Lakers present.
Well, yeah, I mean, it changes everything about what the Lakers present, in part because you have that third option. You have, as Mo was talking about, a guy who feels like he's becoming more of a third presence, like beyond just the scoring. You saw some really good defensive moments for Kuzma. You also saw him make some really good reads on the floor. And Kuzma's talked a lot about wanting to become more of a playmaker. And, I don't think he's ready to run sets yet or anything like that for the Lakers. And, an issue that they have is they don't have a ton of playmaking on that team.
Yeah, Dion Waiters, Andy.
I mean, look, Dion's going to be relied on for some of that. I mean, he is for better or for worse, or I imagine in some games, both. That's going to be happening. But with Kuzma, though, like, he's the only guy on the team that represents that type of potential for upside. Like, everybody else on the team could play really well, but like, we know what a really good version of Danny Green is. It's 3-and-D. It's hopefully at an elite level, but that's it. Like there's not going to be a next level of scoring that comes from Danny Green or playmaking or things like that. Like, it's not what he does. And it's established by now that it's not what he does. I mean, like, Dwight may be shooting, and I'm not exaggerating, like 75% from the field,
right.
In the bubble or for the season, but you only want Dwight doing so much offensively. Like, you're not going to start running sets through Dwight. I mean, you can ask a bunch of teams along the way to Dwight becoming a Laker why you don't do that. Like, the potential upside for all these other guys, even playing at their best. And by the way, playing at their best, they become really valuable pieces for the Lakers. They become really good supporting players. But Kuzma's the only guy, Mo, who I think represents that type of just upside where you could become, like Chris Bosh light. But Chris Bosh light, like the version that the Heat got as that third guy,
the very light,
the B level version of Chris Bosh is a really good player.
It's just the gap between what Kuz was in the regular season and what this would mean in the playoffs, Mo. I think that elevates them.
Yeah, I think, I look at Kuzma, and I'm maybe not as he's going to be a third option or third. I like that you called him the third presence, but I think overall, I think his ceiling is really just a high level role player, kind of like Danny Green or something in that expect a different player, but to that importance. And, the stuff that's really good to see too, though, is, there was no, misgivings from Coach Vogel and drawing up that game-winning play that got, had Kuzma involved as an option, and he no hesitation from him for hitting the three and the hell of a line with Jesus could have been in front of me, I was still shooting it. And
can we talk about that for a second?
I was going to make sure the conversation steered there. Go ahead, Andy.
I mean, I get what Kuzma's saying, and it is a phenomenal line. It's probably the line of the bubble. Is scoring on Jesus really that great of an accomplishment? Like, is it that scary if you line up and you see you're matched up against Jesus? Like, if you're 6'7" Kyle Kuzma,
right?
Like, I mean, what we know about Jesus, like, I mean, the scouting. Mo, you did film. What's the scouting report?
Well, I also know from history of other movies and things I've watched is that he can't hit the curveball. And so,
he couldn't guard Judas. Let's be honest about
that's true.
I don't know.
He couldn't even keep tabs. Like, Judas went back door on Jesus. Like,
oh boy!
I mean, am I wrong?
I don't know.
Honestly, actually, I don't really know either.
Right. But here's why I think this is impressive. It's not like because if you go back to ancient times and when I guess DC, there's BC, there's AD, and then there's like DC during Christ. I mean, like, everybody was short back then. I mean, the guy couldn't have been more than like 5'5", 5'6". Like,
right.
I mean, just couldn't have been. Like, just genetically, if he's a 6-footer, like, that's shocking. I don't know. I mean, he didn't have a shoe deal, and if he did, there were sandals. So I mean, like, he's not. The lateral movement's not there. I think what it is and what makes it impressive, if it's not Bol, who is hard to shoot over, and it's Jesus, who is easier in basketball terms to shoot over, is the fact that it's Jesus. And it's like, if I saw, I'm not a Christian, I'm a Jewish fella. If Jesus came to guard me at a critical moment of a basketball game, I would probably stop what I'm doing. Like, I would be it's damn,
the respect factor is going to be there.
Right. Well, I mean, part of it is I'm just going to be like, oh, is this the second coming? And then
there's all kinds of why are you here? There's like, especially in 2020. Like, do you want to see Jesus in 2020? That's like too much.
And just so you know, that if I did see him and then hit the shot, this would also confirm that me making the shot. Like, oh yes, no, indeed, it is the end. We've reached the
roll him up. That's it.
Good game.
We had a good run. I think that's what makes hitting that shot in Jesus's face more impressive. It's not his defensive ability. It's really just the presence.
What it means to put him on the floor. Like if you if you see Jesus, taking the court, there's something going on there. It's a big deal.
Think about this. Go ahead, Mo.
Well, I'm just curious what you think his trash talk would be like.
You know what, guy?
Take that, my son.
Does he need to? Does Jesus need trash talk?
I feel like Jesus would be the ultimate act like you've been there before guy. Like remember, for people old enough, Art Monk the receiver for Washington, like really prolific.
Barry
and
Sanders, if you want to be slightly more modern.
These guys who just hand the ball back to the referee. I feel like that would be Jesus if he shut you down. He just seems like the type of guy who would act like he's done it before. Like he wouldn't need to celebrate himself.
That's fair. That's fair.
Not that I'm against trash talking. I'm just saying it just doesn't seem, again, for what I know about him, which is exceptionally little.
Yeah, I think having
doesn't feel in his wheelhouse.
I just
think of two Jewish guys and a Muslim talking about Jesus is really kind of an interesting.
That's actually the name of the podcast we're working on, is Two Jews and a Muslim.
Let's do it.
Let's do
just
it.
Like, think how shocked you'd be if you saw like Lincoln came out to guard you, or George Washington.
But that's way more wingspan, though.
But
Lincoln.
True, but it's the shock value, and then it still doesn't have all the implications of Jesus coming back. So
that's true.
I think that's it, and I love the confidence of it. I love Kuz saying, everybody in this league knows I'm a starter. I just have I'd be starting on every team in the league except this one because which is, we can have that debate. I'm not sure he's exactly right, but the thing that I've been harder on Kuzma than I think some people, at least in the LA media over the course of the year, because I just don't think he's been as good as the hype connected to him.
Right.
And the numbers, I think, bear that out. But what I do respect about him,
he
hasn't been very good. What I do respect about him a lot, though, is how he's consistently raising expectations of himself. In training camp, he said, I expect to be, sixth man of the year. Oh, I forget exactly what it was, but he was setting the bar really high for him to go hit it. He didn't, but now he's setting it high again for himself to go hit it. And I respect it. It may not end up being a smart move for him in terms of PR and his look, but as an athlete, I think you have to respect what he's trying to do for himself.
I mean, there are no, you can't be an athlete and not have self-confidence to some degree, right? This is the thing I used to say about Muhammad Ali. He talked how great he was all the time. And maybe it's more so in boxing because it's an individual sport, but you have to believe that you are the greatest of all times to go into that ring every time. And, and I think that's kind of the confidence that you kind of need to see and have that bravado a little bit and things like that. And it's good to see it sort of paying off now for Kuz, because it was a tough year. There are definitely times where he really struggled and things like that. And now when everybody's struggling, he's a bright spot. And it's, something that I wasn't expecting, coming into this.
The other thing too, though, that I like with Kuzma with that, the Jesus line, I think was in part self-deprecating, at least a little bit, just like the idea of, everyone knows
I'm always going to take the shot.
Right. But Kuzma actually in that same post-game session, because I asked him about it, in terms of his own development as a player, where he wants to be. I mean, he said, I've still got a ways to go before I'm the defender that I want to be. I still have a ways to go before I'm the complete playmaker and complete player that I want to be. So, I mean, as much as he'll say, I would be starting on any team in the league, and you can argue about whether or not that's accurate. He has not, I don't think he thinks of himself as having arrived yet. I think he thinks of himself as somebody capable of being there, whether he can or not. But I don't think he's somebody Brian, when you and I covered Jordan Farmar, for example,
Jordan Farmar thought he was the shit before he was the shit.
Exactly. I mean,
that's a UCLA thing.
You're not going to get me to argue against that one as the SC guy, but I mean,
I'm with you.
Yeah, I mean, and Farmar was a solid player. That's not my point, but Jordan thought he was better than he actually was then, and I think really the evidence of that was demonstrated when he came back for that second tour with the Lakers, where I think he was much more sort of grounded about who he was as a player. I don't think Kuzma thinks that he's better than he is in a way that can be detrimental, even if he puts out that type of confidence. Whether or not he can reach the levels that he thinks he's capable of reaching, that's still a very, very open question. But you see players who think that they are, who really, really think they are much better than they actually are.
Yeah.
I don't think that's Kuzma.
Let me ask you guys this, because I want to bounce back to LeBron here in a second. But LeBron, the other really interesting thing that came out of that night when Kuz hit the game winner. And it wasn't, I mean, the win itself was not particularly impressive. They struggled to beat Denver's like second and third team guys down the stretch and needed that shot from Kuzma, which, by the way, that call and the execution just must have made your heart flutter, Mo. I mean, you must have loved that.
Did you recognize that ripped off play?
I didn't recognize it as where he got it from, but I've seen it's just, to me, it's like a regular post split that we've seen kind of run a lot in Golden State as well. So, you know, a little bit different from how it was developed, but I loved it. I mean, anytime, listen, you guys know me. If any game I watch and there's a good executed play, there's little butterflies in my heart. I'm all happy. It's a goofy smile on my face.
At that moment, Mo wanted to have like 1,000 of Frank Vogel's babies. But the other part of that post-game press conference that got people's attention, and rightly so, because LeBron never says anything that doesn't have purpose behind it, was when he said that, you know, for us to win a championship, Kuzma needs to be our third best player. Can he do do you think he can be that good? I'm not saying he's got to be great every night, but that means in 3 out of every 4 games, 3 out of 5, whatever it is that they play, Kuz has to be a legit presence and a legit force on the floor playing really well. Can he do that through 4 rounds?
I think so. I'm a little bit scared because this is his first playoffs, you know, and there is that sense of, even though there's no crowd, the intensity level is going to rise. And, you know, we've seen it in some of these games that we've watched in the bubble. Like when the intensity level picks up, you can feel it. It doesn't necessarily need a crowd. You can see it on the guys. And I think that's something where I'll be curious about for him. But if he just continues to shoot 40% from 3, you know, and gives an effort from 3, and he's shooting 44 now, let's assume, if he's 38. Shooting like 38, that's a big win for the Lakers, you know, and if they get a good AD game and a good LeBron game at the same time, that's a win in a playoff game, and that's huge, and that's really where that kind of goes to it. But Kuz can't have a step back. He can't slow down after these 8 games. He's got to be able to continue to show that defense. He's got to be able to continue to show that confidence offensively. And you know, it's back to what you guys were saying. He's making the right reads and things like that. It gets tougher in the playoffs. So, you know, I'm sure as they go further, it will get harder. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him drop off. But it's a positive sign that this is there.
In the meantime, too, I mean, there's just so many other things that need to pick up for this team. And like, you know, something like the shooting, for example, like I think it can be better than what it's been. But the truth is they've not been a great shooting team all season.
Right, but we've seen with the 3-point shoot, they don't need to be a great 3-point shooting team to be a really efficient offensive team. They're the best team in the league field goal percentage wise. Although a couple people have pointed out a lot of that comes from plays in transition and pushing and all that.
I think they miss Avery Bradley offensively. I really do. I mean, I've heard a couple players, you know, talking with them over Zoom, asking about what they miss with Bradley, and I'll be curious to get your take on this, Mo, because you know you see this stuff better than either one of us. But Bradley's ability to run the wings, you know, like run in transition, like even if he's not the guy that ultimately gets the ball, you know, he has that ability just to create pressure that way. And also, too, I think they miss his in between game. Like he's one of the only guys on this team that regularly goes to a mid-range game with real efficiency. And even though I know it's not, you know, what the analytics say you should do, this is what he's been doing all year. And he's actually been pretty good at it. And it's just something different. Like he's one of the only guys that really presents that type of angle. And I think you know, beyond what you miss from him defensively, you know, the ability to pressure and pick up 94 feet and just be disruptive. I think they actually miss those elements offensively.
Yeah, I think the stuff you touched on, just him running the wings in transition, it's going to draw defenses. Mm-hmm. You know, somebody's going to run out to him, which opens up a lane. Or, you know, I think they're missing opportunities where he cuts. You know, and he may not get
a great cutter.
Yeah, and
he
may not
really
get the
good cutter.
He doesn't get the ball maybe on a cut, but what it does is it forces the defense to move. I'm a big fan. Like that's, if I ever get a chance to coach again, like that's going to be a big part of my offense, is just constant off-ball movement.
Definitely not my team.
But there's going to be constant movement just because it forces the defense to react. And especially when teams are going to go double LeBron, send an extra body at AD, you want to have movement and stuff because that puts their rotations get all screwed up and things like that. And I think that's something they really it's such a small thing that goes unnoticed with most people, but I think that's something that really gets missed with Bradley.
I was going to say, I didn't realize until watching him on a regular basis, and this was probably something you knew because, you've done stuff with the Clippers and you've been with them. I didn't realize just how good of a cutter he was. He's a sneaky good cutter.
It's great. And it's not just like, okay, they go there, I'm going to cut now. It's the timing of it, and a lot of that comes to like when the guy guarding him is looking at him, then looks at the ball. And as soon as he goes to look at the ball, he's gone and he's cutting behind him. And you can see it carefully. You'll see it in some games in the playoffs where a defender his man will cut, but when he goes to recover, he's recovering to where he last saw him. And that's the problem. And I think that's this kind of stuff they're missing here a little bit with the Lakers offense. And that's something that, comes to it. But I also think they're missing Rondo a little bit offensively because he's kind of good at just, it's not the assist, it's the hockey assist, or it's the pass to the pass to the pass. But it's just kind of, he just makes crap happen. And it may not lead to an immediate bucket, but it'll somehow force a movement and go.
There's frustration, I think, always with Rondo, but they just don't have anybody else right now who can replicate the skill set. And him or dislike him, they don't have anybody who can do it. You need somebody
for all of Rondo's issues, and there are a lot, and there are real. They are real. Even if you think that he is overrated or like a shadow, of himself, in terms of what he's supposed to be, they don't have a lot of players who can replicate it.
So let me ask you guys this, and then because we have a lot to still to get to, including the rules about who exactly is allowed in the bubble, and who you might want to bring in. Yes. If you had that kind of power to get somebody into the bubble, to penetrate the bubble, who would you bring in? So we have a couple of things to ask about that. But I'm getting the impression, Andy, I know you agree, LeBron does not like the bubble. LeBron does not like bubble life. He doesn't like being there. I think he finds being away from his family in this way stressful. I think he just it's not, he doesn't like it. He hasn't said in as many words, but it seems pretty clear when you watch his post games and his press conferences, Mo, this is not for him. And so do you think that has anything to do with the performance?
I think it has an effect for sure. I don't know how much I would say it does, but it's something that weighs on you. Like I know players in the NBA who, they can't perform unless everything in their life is rolling, and everything's at peace. And I know guys who can only play when things are chaotic or other ways around. And, obviously I don't know LeBron personally, but, it does feel like he draws a lot of energy from his family. And I think that's something that he's missing. And it's hard to have that. Like when I did Team Australia stuff, I was gone for 3 months at a time, during the off season, and I wasn't anywhere near my family. It was just hard to feel connected to anybody, anybody back home. I just didn't have that. So I didn't have the same strict quarantine or rules that he has in the bubble, but it's a challenge. And I think I can see it. You can see it in every press conference because he mentions it somehow, passively in every press conference. It does weigh on him in a way, and there's no way it doesn't bleed a little bit into his, game on the court.
And then Andy, I do wonder as well. I don't know if it's a lighting thing with the games inside the bubble, the way that they've got that set up on any of the courts, whatever. The TV, maybe he's seen a few shots. The TV stuff has not made his hairline look good.
Dude, it is jacked.
It is not.
That hairline good. Is straight up. Fucked up. Like it just is. We've learned from our president that different light bulbs, different lighting can totally change the way you look as a person. And that's why it's so important that he's trying to change light bulbs in America. But maybe the bubble has left LeBron
and shower heads.
And shower heads.
Forgetting these important
they're connected.
That our priorities are lined
connected.
Up.
There's no point to having the luxuriousness of a proper light bulb if you don't get the shower that first sets up your hair.
That's exactly right.
So
your skin, get the glow.
Perhaps LeBron feels exposed in the bubble, and that's become distracting for him. But dude needs. We brought up Jesus before. Dude needs to come to Jesus.
Yeah, it's time to come home. It's time to come home. It's time to come home.
And
we know what we speak of, Mo.
Guys, the template is there. The template is 100% there because the beard, honestly, the beard looks great. I like when he lets the gray in. You can get rid of it. Doesn't matter.
He should do more of that.
Isaac Hayes. Like that's the look, the clean,
MJ.
super clean up top. No, but MJ never had the thick beard. Super clean
True.
up top.
Okay.
With the nice bushy beard underneath. Like that would be a great look on LeBron. Like that's okay. Go there, my friend.
It's time too.
It
And
is.
you know what? I would love it if he unveiled it for the playoffs.
Oh,
if it was just one of those things of like, all right, it's time to shave and let's go.
It sounds so stupid. That would break Twitter.
It would be. Twitter would go
Maybe
completely
that's playoff
nuts.
LeBron. Maybe because remember last year we were supposed to. What did he say? He was activated, and then unfortunately it never happened.
Right.
Maybe this is activated LeBron. Like he's going. You heard it here first, people. He's gonna shave the head. He's gonna bick the thing before the playoffs.
There are 2 times where I'll say LeBron's gonna have huge games. It's when he bicks the head. He's gonna have a monster game, and whenever his family arrives at Disney World, then I'm going to expect like whatever stats he was doing, I expect it to go up at least 10 to 15%.
All right. So
it's got to be hard for a guy like LeBron. Forget just wanting to be around his family. And we know how close that he is to his family and how much it matters to him. There's nobody arguably in the league with more going on outside of basketball than LeBron. So it's got to be, for him in particular, being confined in this type of space has got to really be bizarre.
Screwed. And I don't know if you guys saw it. Sorry, I know, Brian, we're about to change topics, but the Woj just tweeted an article from Jeff Passan, and they've just said that LeBron is teaming up with the Dodgers to turn Dodger Stadium into a polling place in November.
Oh, that's awesome!
That's awesome.
So the stuff he's doing and the stuff he's always working on. And it has nothing to do with his game, but it's just kind of proven that like he's doing a lot, and he's got a lot on his plate. So he's always working on stuff. So I just wanted to highlight that's a dope thing. That's something I think every NBA team's arena should be used as a polling place as well as their practice facilities.
Dodger Stadium, very versatile right now. You can get a COVID test and now you can vote. You can probably do both at the same time, I guess, on election day if you want.
2 birds, 1 stone.
That's right. It's a high PER trip to Chavez Ravine. Quick reminder, 20% off at Delicious Pizza, 2 locations, West Adams and Hollywood, deliciouspizza.com, or when you call up, use the code CAMBROTHERS, password. I think it's a password, CAMBROTHERS. CAMBROTHERS. Like you just whisper it in the phone, you get 20% off. Great food, supporting a local business in LA, and they just happen to be big Laker fans. So you're doing a lot of good work there by ordering.
You're supporting local business and Laker fans all in one fell swoop while getting really well fed because the pizza's awesome.
Pizza's great.
Food's great.
So deliciouspizza.com. We're going to get to this bubble visitor thing here and who's allowed in. I ask this question all the time to basically everyone. I still think the Lakers and Clippers, particularly now that Westbrook is maybe going to miss a little time and Denver hasn't quite got their guys back in order and all that. Still Lakers and Clippers. Based on what we saw over those 8 games, Mo, who do you give the edge to right now, assuming those 2 teams meet in the Western Conference Finals?
It's tough. Like I think it's actually a 7-game series. I think it's a lot closer than people would give it. I'm just gonna go Clippers right now, but it's like a hair. Like if you could ask me in 2 hours, and I might have changed my mind. It's gonna be tight, and I think what the Clippers just have a lot of weapons they can continually to throw at you. And okay, Marcus Morris isn't hitting shots. Okay, fine. JaMychal Green, get on the floor, and hopefully he's making shots. If not, it's Patrick Patterson. Like they can go different. They have like almost multiple guys they can go to try to fill whatever role. And I think that's kind of the depth that the Lakers are missing. I think the Lakers have 2 of the best 3 players in that series. And I think that's something like, we always know in the playoffs, top end talent matters. And I think that's something that makes the difference there. So it's going to be a real tight series. I think, the games throughout the year have been relatively close. All of them at times, Lakers looked like they were going to win and then the Clippers pull it out at the end and stuff like that. So I don't know if I feel like any team should feel so confident that they could beat the other one. I just think it's going to be a brawl. And I know you guys are too, and everybody is, but I'm just devastated we're not going to get to see that at Staples Center.
I know. Sucks.
This thing's never going to happen. Like, let's just be honest. We've been promised a hallway series since 2006. Remember the year that Kobe and the Lakers lost in the first round of the Suns because they blew that 3-1 lead. And the Clippers actually made the playoffs because at the time that was extremely unusual.
Yeah.
And they beat Denver in the first round. And we were supposed to get that hallway series, and it never happened.
Yeah.
Then it didn't happen during the Kobe Powell years versus the Lob City. Like, it's never going to happen. I don't know why.
It's like Fetch. It's like Fetch. We should stop making
Mean Girls.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we should just stop making it. Trying to make it happen. I agree with. I've been kind of shading Clippers most of the year, and it's for those same reasons. It's like I feel like okay, Lou Will there. You have Trez. You have like all these things. Kawhi's going to be Kawhi, and I think like it's kind of funny because you don't think of him in this way, but like their Kyle Kuzma in a lot of ways is Paul George. Like if you get the version of Paul George that was an MVP caliber player for a lot of last season, like that guy, they're going to win a title. Like that is a title champ. That's a championship team. Like if Paul George is a top 5 guy with Kawhi, with that bench, with that versatility and that coaching, I think it's kind of a wrap. But you just don't know. You don't know what it's going to be. And Andy and I argued about this last week. We don't need to get back into it. I just feel like they have a bigger margin for error because if George is having a little rougher game, you have a better chance of getting something from Lou Williams or some of those other guys.
If you look at his playoff history, you don't.
And against the Lakers are good at taking him out of games. Like they've shown the ability.
If you look at Lou's history in the playoffs, you actually don't.
I'm just saying,
it's considerably worse.
This is very much Stewie talking to Brian about his book. That whole tone Andy had going. I love it.
All right. The NBA announced, this might help LeBron get some of his friends and family into the bubble, that you can bring in guests starting as early as August 31st. Those with, this is fantastic language. Those with, quote, established, pre-existing, and known relationships. And it can't, you have to, physically, know a person. It can't be, a person I know from Instagram or something like that. You have to, actually, it's got to be documented that you, know these people.
Oh, that whole thing is really just saying no IG models.
Right.
The IG model that you hook up with when you're in Indianapolis, she doesn't count.
Right. The stripper that you know from when you normally visit Orlando doesn't count. That's not what we mean by knowing.
It needs to be documented. There needs to be documentation that this is a real thing, a real family member, not a suspiciously hot cousin that we've never heard you mention before that all of a sudden is in your family tree. There needs to be proof.
How many cousins does he have?
Why do they all want one room?
None of them look alike. What's going on? What is this?
They're all sharing one room, one bed?
So confused.
Weird family. Yeah,
so but that's how things are.
But yeah, the definition of pre-existing, personal, known, and established is going to be really, really key to this whole thing, Mo.
Yeah, I mean, I understand all of it too. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons. First, the probably the not positive one is some guys might know the same person, and it might not be might ruin the harmony we have in the bubble.
So you're saying someone's cousin might be someone else's cousin too?
Yeah.
I didn't know we were family.
Or it could even be that cousin of yours, it turns out, was dating this other player who, by the way, his wife is there.
Yeah.
There's a lot potentially that could happen.
There's so many areas where it's this could go really wrong. And of course, there's the other thing. And this is the thing that scares me even when the families come is, this is the next test in terms of the COVID and keeping this a clean environment.
Well, they do. Everybody's got a quarantine. Everybody's got, it's either 3 days off campus and then 4 when you get there, or 7 when you get there. So I suspect most families will do the former, where you Because this is the thing, like, I wonder how many people actually are going to be able to get their families there. Because if you have little kids, keeping them inside a room for 4 days is not going to be easy.
Plus, a lot of them are starting school.
If you got to go to school,
virtually,
like all these other
whatnot.
things. So a lot of these players are not really going to have their families there. It might be a girlfriend, it might be whatever. And I should point out, like, basketball players are no different than any other young men, young rich men, athletes, whatever it is. The jokes are so low hanging.
Yeah,
we can't help but make them. But it's like these guys, it's not like we're talking about a bunch of dirt bags who are just all going to try to bring in hookers. And it's not it's not that. It's not necessarily, it's not, like, most of these guys just want to bring their girlfriends or bring their wives or see their kids, or they treat it like anybody else would treat the opportunity to get people inside the bubble. It's not their fault the NBA put out that release with that kind of language.
Yeah.
That made the
yes,
well, it is
no.
a little their fault.
Yes and no. I was going to say it's not totally not their fault. I mean, there's a reason the language was specific.
Yes,
and to some degree, I mean, fault might be the wrong word. They are the catalyst for that language, even if fault you feel is too strong.
Okay, I see what you're saying. If you guys could, like, in sort of like, I obviously would bring my wife, Andy would bring his, and Mo, whoever you find significant in your life. But if you could bring in anybody,
let's just.
Wow, that turned dark. Really,
that was sad.
That's the reason why I'm in space alone, fellas.
I was just trying to breeze through the part about, like, I don't know a whole lot about Mo's personal life. I don't want to dwell. So, but like, if you could get anybody in, and ignoring the established, pre-existing, and known relationship part, just to keep you company, just because you think they would be fun, who would you bring into the bubble with you?
I've been thinking about this for a while. And it needs to be somebody that you can kind of just have a good time with, have a laugh with. This is somebody you're going to hang out with for the next 2 months. And it's somebody you're going to kind of see all the time. And it's somebody I don't know at all. And I'm not looking at this in terms of the IG models or anything like that way, but just somebody to hang with. Kind of just want to hang out with George Clooney. So I'm going to bring Clooney with me.
Clooney
I just feel
fun.
like
It's on my list.
It'd be a fun hang.
It's on my list.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Just a fun hang all together. I think he would just make things interesting. He likes to play jokes and things like that. We can keep.
He's known for holding court. Like, this sounds like kind of his deal.
It's very similar, actually, to my pick, Andy. I'll just say mine is Tom Hanks. Like, I'm bringing Hanks with me.
Hanks would be.
Everybody
fantastic.
loves Tom Hanks.
Yeah, it's true, and he's just such a lovely guy. Like,
yeah. So you and I are on the same page, Andy.
No, that's a really good one. Like, my immediate instinct for a question like this is always Bill Murray. But then I thought about it a little more, and I'm like, Bill Murray would be incredibly entertaining for those moments that he wants to be. But he's also got a rep for being moody. And this is too long for a period of a guy with moodiness. So my criteria was, I want guys who seem like they'd be easy hangs, and also guys with stories. Like, guys that could just keep me entertained with stories, or like the things that they're interested in, stuff like that. So the guys on my list are Jeff Bridges. He's known as one of the most easygoing guys in Hollywood. Seems like a great hang. He's got stories. He'll start a guitar circle. He'll teach me about photography. Keith Richards, major laid back. He's got stories for days.
Might be hard to understand them.
I got time. I got time to learn.
My bigger issues is he might get you kicked out of the bubble with what he's packing.
Well, but remember, there's no testing. Remember,
that's true.
There is no testing in the bubble, and certainly they don't test somebody like me who isn't going to be playing. I'm just in the bubble for unspecified reasons. David Letterman, I think, would be fantastic. Especially
Letterman's a little intense these days, though.
No, I think it's the opposite. I think he's less intense. He does his talk show now. He seems more laid back. And then finally, and this is not about the politics, he just seems like he'd be great to hang with, and he's got stories. Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only problem with bringing in Obama is that too many people are going to want to be hanging with you. Like, you bring Obama into the bubble, you're going to have a lot of people around you. It'd be hard to find alone time with you and your buddy.
No, but though, it works out well for me because, there are going to be times where I just want alone time, period. So they all hang out with my buddy Obama, and then I get to go hang in my room.
I think one thing that makes Hanks a winner here is that he can do quarantine. Like he's done it already.
Right.
Like he can do 14 days in one place without it being a problem. What?
He had 5 years in Castaway.
Exactly. He's done even more than that. So that's I think what that's what I would do with that. Andy, you had something you wanted to mention about virtual fans before we go. I'm kind of digging these things.
I love them. Mo, I love the era of virtual fans. I love the creativity that's going into this. I love people sitting there with their pets, or somehow a goat was there. Like I think actually, I'm sure this is still an adjustment for the players involved, and this is weird, and I don't blame them for it being weird. But for the fan experience of watching these games from your house, I think the league has done a fantastic job. I feel like you're only going to be distracted by the piped-in noise or the lack of true fans if you're looking to be distracted. Like, to me, like it's felt like any other NBA game. I think it's been really fun, and I think they've made the best out of a difficult situation.
I thought they've done a great job across the board. I mean, watching it on TV, I don't know how you guys feel, but like, I don't feel like it's that different from a game.
Oh.
It's the same. And I know people who are like, oh, this is annoying. So that I'm like, man, that's a you problem. Because that's just, I think you said it perfectly, Andy. They're looking for something to point out. The virtual fans is awesome. I think, putting in players, family members in there was a great idea. Did you guys
Kuzma
see this?
Balled out in front of virtual Mama Kuzma. That's balled out, man.
It's dope, And did you guys see the what the Suns did recently for the opening lineup and having each family member kind of introducing them? Like, that's just awesome. And I thought that was fun. I think there's a level of creativity that they're playing with. Obviously, everybody would prefer real fans there, but this is still a fun thing, and I think it's a fun way to keep fans engaged and rolling with their team and things like that. So for me, man, it was a smart idea. I would have never have thought about it, to be honest. I'm glad they put it all together and things like that. So you can't go wrong with it, man. I think it's been fun.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. And aside from, like, I kind of like seeing what the courts look like. It's kind of neat. I like that look. It's fun to see like a team's home court. Other than that, it's the same. It's like watching a game on TV. All right, Mo Dakhil. You know him from Nerder She Wrote with Dave Dufour. You get that on The Athletic. Kelly Eco, Brody and the Beard, and then obviously all the stuff at Bleacher Report. Sometimes we do the thing where like we let the guests go, and then we like Andy and I keep talking. We're not doing that this time, Andy. We're just going to let them go, right?
No, we want all Mo for this show. This is the Dakhil, as we said before, and reaching out to you. We're in the Dakhil business, and once we're done with Mo, the show's over.
Yep. And anytime you guys need me, I'm available. I love chatting with you guys. I miss hanging out at Staples Center with you guys. You guys
hanging out on Earth.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you'll get.
What I've learned throughout this is, Mo, you're a very, very lonely man.
I'm in space. What am I supposed to do?
So yeah, and again, 20% off at deliciouspizza.com. 2 locations, Hollywood and West Adams. Tell them that the Cam Brothers sent you, either delicious online or when you call them up, carry out, all that stuff. It's really great food. Big Lakers fans, support your local businesses. We'll be back on Monday previewing the first round when we know who it's going to be after the big weekend play-in games. Thanks again to Mo, and thanks again to you for listening. Subscribe everywhere you get your podcasts.